It was a scene painted in the brutal, unrelenting amber light of the Serengeti late afternoon, a tableau of impossible despair that unfolded against the ancient, muddy currents of the Mara River. Right now, this story demands your immediate attention, because what you are about to witness defies every rule of the wild, a true, documented miracle of intervention. Stop scrolling for just a moment, take a deep breath, and prepare yourself for the raw terror and subsequent, unbelievable hope contained in these moments. And before we dive into the churning waters of this nightmare, do us a quick favor: hit that subscribe button and click the like button. You won't want to miss how this story concludes, and trust me, the conclusion is why we are all here. Now let's go deeper. You've seen wildlife dramas before, but never one quite like this. Never one where the odds were so mathematically tilted toward tragedy. The premise is simple, horrifyingly so: a lone zebra cub, barely 6 weeks old, clumsy in its newly striped coat, separated from its protective tower of stripes and trapped in the heart of a crocodile congregation. The question isn't if the river would claim it, but when. Yet, the most astounding part of this narrative is not the danger, but the identity of the creature that risked everything to save it. You simply won't believe who it was. Keep watching, and we will reveal the hero that emerged from the dusty plains and the thick, suffocating heat. The setting was the Great Migration, the largest mass movement of land mammals on Earth, a cycle of life and death driven by instinct and the search for grazing grass. Thousands upon thousands of zebras and wildebeests pressed towards the riverbank, a dizzying, moving tapestry of muscle and fear. The air tasted of dust and adrenaline. The mother zebra, nervous, twitching, pushed her small foal forward. He was a perfect specimen of innocence. Legs too long, eyes wide and dark, the black stripes around his muzzle giving him a perpetually startled expression. His mother knew the Mara crossing was the gauntlet, the necessary sacrifice point in their journey, but she had to trust the power of the herd, the sheer confusion that allowed a few lucky individuals to slip past the river's silent guardians. The disaster began with a momentary lapse, a fraction of a second when the little cub's long legs tangled in the thick river grass near the water's edge. The mother, jostled by a panicked wildebeest, was swept forward by the current of the crossing herd. She cried out, a strangled, desperate bark, but the momentum of the migration is a physical force that tolerates no pause, no delay. In an instant, she was 10 yards into the water, fighting the current, her terrified eyes fixed on the bank where her offspring stumbled alone. He was caught in the worst possible spot, a small, muddy island shelf, just wide enough for him to stand on, isolated by a channel of fast-moving, opaque water. The depth here was perfect for hunting. It offered camouflage, speed, and concealment. The first sign of the inevitable arrived without fanfare, just a ripple where there should have been only still water. A V-shaped wake, cutting with terrifying precision toward the shelf. The cub, still dazed and calling for his mother, couldn't comprehend the silent threat. He saw the water, he felt the loneliness, but the ancient, cold horror below the surface was invisible to his young mind. And then, the predator broke the surface. It was colossal, a Nile crocodile of immense age, its hide thick and scarred, its eyes yellow and dead. It surfaced slowly, barely disturbing the water, testing the distance, assessing the easy meal. The cub finally registered the danger. His bleating turned high-pitched, a shriek of pure terror that was instantly swallowed by the roar of the rushing river and the distant pounding hooves of the migrating herd. The mother, already halfway across the main channel, began to fight the current, trying desperately to swim back toward the danger, an act of selfless, suicidal devotion. But the distance was too great, and the current was unforgiving, pulling her further and further away from her trapped child. She could only watch, her terror broadcast in every strained muscle. This single crocodile was a death sentence. But then, the situation escalated from tragic to utterly impossible. The Mara River is a graveyard during migration, and where there is one crocodile, there are always more. We watch in agonizing slow motion as 3 more shapes emerge, silent submarines surrounding the small muddy platform. They didn't charge, they didn't thrash. They established a perimeter, a circle of ancient jaws and cold intent. The largest of the 4, which we can only assume was the alpha, was positioned directly between the cub and the only possible escape route back to the shore. The cub was sealed off, stranded, and offering. His little legs began to tremble, and he tried to take a step, slipping in the mud. He was too young to know how to fight, too small to run. He simply stood there, waiting for the inevitable, a perfect portrait of doom. And here is where the narrative pivots, where the cold, predictable reality of the wild fractures into something entirely unexpected. Just when hope had completely evaporated, when the camera operator recording this tragedy had already begun mentally narrating the cub's final moments, a subtle shift occurred on the distant riverbank, far away from the crocodile's immediate line of sight. It was a movement that made absolutely no sense. Remember that promise, a hero emerged, defying nature itself. The entire audience watching this stream, the experts analyzing the footage, the rangers on the ground, not one person could have predicted what was about to happen next. This was not a fellow zebra, not a caring antelope, and certainly not the mother, who was still helplessly struggling against the main current. This was a completely alien presence in this high-stakes standoff. The largest crocodile, tiring of the waiting game, began to sink lower, adjusting its position for the final strike. Its snout was almost touching the mud shelf. We could hear the desperate, ragged breathing of the tiny cub over the microphone, a sound of absolute finality. This was the end. The open loop of the cub's survival was about to be closed violently by the laws of the jungle. But suddenly, the massive crocodile hesitated. Not out of fear of the cub, but in response to an entirely new, unidentifiable shadow falling over the water. It was a shadow that felt wrong, out of context, accompanied by a sound that was deep and guttural, unlike the sharp bellowing of the migrating herd. The predator's concentration was broken. Its yellow eye rolled up, focusing on the approaching shape, not out of aggression, but something akin to confusion, perhaps even annoyance. The shape grew larger, closer, moving swiftly along the bank, directly opposite the zebra cub. It was massive, powerful, and utterly dedicated. Whatever it was, it moved with a purpose that seemed entirely focused on this impossible rescue mission. Its presence was a pattern interrupting the cruel, predictable flow of the river drama. It was not entering the water to hunt, it was entering the scene to disrupt. What follows is the most unbelievable intervention ever captured on film. This creature, acting entirely against its own natural programming, against the very order of the Mara, was committing itself to saving this small, striped foal. You have to see this to believe it, and the full identity of the hero is coming. But first, allow us to emphasize the stakes one more time. This tiny zebra cub is trapped, surrounded by 4 massive, ancient predators ready to strike. It is doomed, and the only potential savior is something that should logically be another threat, or at the very least, indifferent. It is entirely alone, terrified, and seconds away from being lost forever. Do not move. If you have ever been mesmerized by the sheer willpower of survival, if you believe in the possibility of miracles where none should exist, you need to stay tuned for the next part of this epic story. The fate of the zebra cub rests entirely on this strange, magnificent arrival. The largest crocodile has now locked eyes with the approaching rescuer, an almost visible challenge passing between them, an ancient test of dominance that is not usually played out over the fate of a 6-week-old foal. The air is electric, the tension is unbearable, and the truth of the savior's identity is about to be revealed. You will be absolutely stunned. If you have enjoyed this incredible journey so far, please take a moment to subscribe, like the video, and most importantly, let us know in the comments below, from what country or city are you watching this unbelievable moment unfold? Your support keeps these stories coming, and we promise you, the payoff for this patience is unlike anything you've ever seen. The cub is trembling, the crocodiles are ready, and the savior is positioned for the impossible intervention. We are moments away from the grand reveal. The air above the river shimmered, heavy and metallic with the heat of the African noon, but the true heat, the scalding reality of existential terror, was concentrated right there, clinging to the striped flanks of the tiny zebra foal. If you've been following this harrowing tale, you know the impossible tightrope this little life is walking, separated from its mother, trapped in the unforgiving current of the Mara River, and encircled by the silent, ancient killers of the deep. This is where the story gets thick, where every second stretches into an eternity of desperate hope. If you are gripped by this story of survival against all odds, please take a moment right now, tap that subscribe button, and smash the like, because what you are about to witness defies everything we think we know about the wild heart of nature. The drama unfolding now is not merely a tragedy, it is a statement. A statement about how quickly protection can turn into peril, how swiftly the guiding light of a mother's presence can be extinguished by the blinding terror of solitude. Think of the river itself, the murky, indifferent water that separates the foe from safety. It is not just a barrier, it is the stage for a massacre, and the audience, the rest of the zebra herd huddled uselessly on the high bank, can only watch. The crocodiles, sleek and powerful, had completed their initial perimeter. They were no longer moving quickly, they were moving with lethal intelligence. There were 4 of them now, perhaps 5, identifiable only by the subtle, unsettling ripples they left on the surface, or the sudden, brief appearance of an eye yellow and cold, breaking the water like an evil jewel. Their patience was the most terrifying weapon. They were waiting for the inevitable, for the foal's strength to fail, for the current to push the cub just 1 foot closer to the central vortex of their ambush. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and the cub's liquid fear. The little zebra cub, barely strong enough to navigate a mild stream, was fighting the full force of the river's heart. Its legs, still wobbly from birth, churned the muddy water in frantic, short bursts. Each breath was a ragged gulp, a mixture of water vapor and panic. It cried out again, a thin, high-pitched bleat that was swallowed immediately by the vastness of the plains. It was a sound that articulated absolute, guttural desperation, a sound the mother heard, and a sound the crocodiles registered only as a successful tracking beacon. But where was the mother? Why hadn't the whole herd charged the water? This is the agonizing truth of the wild. Sometimes the cost of rescue is the annihilation of the entire family unit. The mother, driven nearly mad on the bank, paced back and forth, her hooves tearing the dry earth, but the threat was too profound. Those 4 or 5 massive, armored forms represented instant death for any land animal that dared to cross the threshold of the river's dominance. The maternal instinct was at war with the survival instinct, and for the moment, the cold logic of self-preservation kept the herd rooted, observers to the impending horror. The pattern of movement changed. One of the largest crocodiles, a behemoth with a scarred, moss-green back, began to sink lower. This wasn't a warning, it was the preparation for the final lunge. The water around the cub began to churn slightly, subtle eddies signaling the tightening of the noose. The cub, sensing the shift, tried a desperate, final surge toward the wrong bank, the crocodile-infested side. It was a move born of sheer confusion and exhaustion, the last flicker of a terrified mind. Suddenly, a massive, muscular tail slapped the water 10 feet away, a sound like a gunshot that momentarily startled the cub. This was not the crocodile attacking, this was a purposeful, disruptive sound. The crocodilians froze. Their ancient hunting routines had been interrupted by something massive and unknown entering their zone. The tension that was already suffocating became unbearable, because now the threat was double, the predators lurking below and the unknown force that had just announced its presence with a seismic crack. We were promised an unbelievable rescue, a moment that would shatter the strict hierarchy of predator and prey, but right now, with the water boiling around the trembling cub, the possibility of survival seems less than zero. Who could possibly possess the speed, the agility, and the sheer nerve to face down a gang of fully grown now crocodiles in their native element? Who would risk everything for a creature that is, by nature, a food source? It is a question that hung heavy in the air, a breath held by every creature watching this slow-motion execution. The sound came again, closer this time, a powerful, rhythmic churning of water, not the silent glide of the crocodiles, but a deliberate, forceful displacement. The giant, scarred crocodile that had been preparing to strike paused, lifting its massive head just enough so that only its wide, dark snout broke the surface. It was assessing the new threat, its dominance challenged. The zebra cub, utterly drained, had begun to drift slightly downstream, carried by the current directly into the path of the nearest lurking predator. Its stripes, usually a camouflage in the tall grasses, now stood out starkly against the brown water, making it a perfect, visible target. The current spun the cub slightly, and for the first time, its small eyes closed, resigning itself to the inevitable cold snap of the jaws. Then, just as the crocodile closest to the cub began its final, rapid acceleration, that terrifying burst of speed that signals the end, a shadow erupted from the deeper water upstream. It was not a bird of prey. It was not a larger zebra bull sacrificing itself. It was a creature of immense power, moving with the focused, terrible grace of a veteran warrior. It slammed into the flank of the accelerating crocodile with the force of a battering ram. The impact was bone-jarring. The water exploded upward in a magnificent, blinding plume of foam and spray, momentarily obscuring everything. The surprise was total. The crocodile, thrown off course and momentarily stunned, rolled violently, its armored underbelly flashing white in the sunlight before it disappeared beneath the surface, completely disoriented. The savior, the unlikely, courageous, and utterly magnificent intervening force, did not pause. It moved immediately toward the stranded cub, driving the smaller predators away with focused, aggressive movements. This was not a panicked defense. This was calculated, precise offense designed to clear a path. Who was it? What creature possesses the empathy to challenge the apex predator of the river? It was a shape instantly recognizable for its density and formidable bulk, yet utterly unbelievable in this role. The sheer audacity of its intervention, the commitment to protect a creature entirely unrelated to it, was staggering. We are talking about a true titan of the river, one known for territorial rage and solitary behavior, now acting as an escort, a guardian, a fierce defender of the lost. The remaining crocodiles, shocked by the force and speed of the newcomer, scattered, their sleek heads ducking low, wary of this sudden, unprecedented interruption of their hunt. The lone cub was instantly enveloped in the shadow of its enormous, benevolent protector. The threat, though still surrounding them, had been neutralized by sheer presence. The crisis of immediate death was averted, but the story is far from over. The savior now faces the full, organized vengeance of the crocodiles, who will not easily abandon such an easy meal, especially now that their pride has been wounded. Can this one powerful animal shepherd the tiny, terrified cub across the treacherous river and back to the waiting, distraught mother? The odds are still stacked against them, perhaps even more so now that the protector has drawn the full attention of the predators. This is a battle for the ages, a true test of courage, and the climax is still ahead. If this incredible display of bravery and the power of unlikely connections has moved you, please, make sure you are subscribed so you don't miss the conclusion. Hit the like button to show your support for this incredible duo, and comment below telling us what country or city you are watching this extraordinary story from. You won't want to miss part 3, where we see if this unlikely partnership can make it to shore. The muddy water churned, reflecting the terrified, wide eyes of the smallest zebra. We left him minutes ago, inches from absolute doom, the snapping jaws of the river giants closing the gap with agonizing slowness. If you've been following this unbelievable struggle, you know the tension has been unbearable, building into a suffocating pressure. But what happens next? Who arrives to interrupt this deadly certainty, and save this baby, will shock you to your core. It is a reversal of fate so profound, so against the brutal logic of the savannah, that it demands your attention. Before we plunge back into the final, defining moments of this fight for life, take a quick second. Hit that subscribe button and give us a like. Trust me, you do not want to miss how this story, a true testament to the randomness of mercy, truly ends. Remember that chilling silence just before the inevitable strike? That heavy, expectant pause when the largest crocodile, a monster armored in black and green, finally committed to the lunge? That felt like the end, the final frame in the desperate, short story of this brave, bewildered calf. Or so it should have been. The midday sun beat down, turning the air thick and shimmering, blurring the edges of the horizon. The mud was slick, unforgiving, and the metallic smell of death hung heavy over the periphery of the watering hole. The cub, exhausted beyond movement, managed one last, feeble retreat, stumbling back against the sharp, woody tangle of acacia roots, a desperate barrier that offered no real protection, merely a final spot of ground to die upon. The circle tightened, geometrically perfect and absolutely lethal. 3 massive crocs were now in perfect striking range, their snouts resting on the lip of the bank, the terrible symmetry of their teeth glinting in the harsh light. The first, the undisputed patriarch of this stretch of river, began to open its massive jaws, not a warning snap, but a slow, committed, lethal strike aimed at the cub's fragile neck. Time seemed to warp, stretching the millisecond of attack into an agonizing, endless moment. The cub shut its eyes, yielding to the fate that had been hunting it since birth. Where was the herd? Why did nature allow this isolation, this cruel, drawn-out abandonment of the innocent? And who, in this desolate, heartless corner of the wild, possessed the speed, the strength, and the sheer, blind audacity to challenge these apex predators, the ancient rulers of the water? Keep those questions burning, because the answer is not what you expect, and it defies everything you think you know about the unwritten laws of the savannah. As the crushing jaws lowered, the air was suddenly ripped apart, not by the expected roar of a distant lion, nor the trumpeting fury of an elephant, but by a sound far more primal, a deep, guttural bellow that carried the weight of ancient rage and territorial possession. It was a noise that seemed to vibrate in the very chest of the earth. The crocodiles froze. Their ancient, reptilian eyes flicked up instantly, instinctively sensing a monumental shift in the ecosystem around them, a variable they had not accounted for. This was not the frightened scream of prey. This was a challenge, a declaration of ownership, a warning issued by something that feared absolutely nothing. The zebra cub, head pressed deep into the cooling dirt, perhaps registered the disturbance only as a brief reprieve, a tiny, fragile whisper of hope against the overwhelming tide of terror. But what was it? It couldn't be the mother. That initial sound was too deep, too heavy. The movement followed the sound, bursting from the dense reeds directly behind the cub. It was a huge, blurring shape, impossibly fast for its size. The initial thought was that it must be an elephant, but it was lower to the ground, darkly armored in thick, dusty hide, its silhouette unmistakable and terrifying in its own right. It was a pattern interrupt in the cruelest game of survival, a sudden, explosive violation of the predator-prey dynamic. This is the moment. The instant where the impossible happens, where the rules of the wild are shattered and reassembled by an act of stunning, random aggression. If you thought this story was dramatic before, prepare yourself. Because the hero of this silent tragedy is about to be unveiled, and it is the single most surprising and violent act of interspecies protection ever witnessed at this dangerous watering hole. The dust cleared, the thick haze momentarily lifted, and the identity of the savior sent a visceral shockwave through the brutal serenity of the scene. It was not a hero driven by kinship, not a member of the zebra's own species responding to the distress call. It was a massive, scarred, solitary Cape buffalo bull, known in these parts as one of the Black Death, a beast whose temperament is notoriously volatile, driven by unpredictable fury, and usually caring only for the protection of its own scarred hide. His horns curved like heavy, brutal parentheses around a face etched with countless battles and deep-set suspicion. This creature, the embodiment of untamable, territorial aggression, the one animal that lions respect and even fear, had placed himself directly between the terror and the victim. He stood broadside, a living, breathing wall of muscle and malice, shielding the terrified, striped calf from the line of death. He didn't hesitate, didn't calculate the risk. With a terrifying, explosive snort, the bull lowered his massive head and charged the largest crocodile. This was not a defensive stance, not a warning shot. It was a full, committed, pulverizing offensive. The sight was absolutely breathtaking, a land fortress taking on the river's most feared assassin. The sound of the horn connecting with the thick, scaled hide of the crocodile was sickeningly dull, a heavy, bone-jarring thud that echoed the absolute finality of the confrontation. The crocodile, momentarily stunned, heavily bruised, and violently thrown sideways, recoiled instantly. Its ancient instincts screamed retreat from this unprecedented, massive land-based aggressor. The buffalo was relentless, pressing the advantage, stomping and driving the first croc back, forcing it to slide awkwardly into the deeper, safer water. The other two crocodiles, witnesses to the sudden, brutal, and asymmetrical shift in the power dynamics, understood the message immediately. The watering hole, their territory, their hunting ground, was temporarily claimed by a lunatic with 4 horns and nothing to lose. Survival instincts overrode hunger. They slid silently beneath the churning surface, vanishing without a ripple. The existential threat evaporated as quickly as it had materialized. The open loops of the terrifying conflict were closed, the cub was saved, the immediate threat neutralized, and the savior was the one species least expected to offer mercy or intervention. Silence returned, heavy and saturated with the lingering scent of adrenaline and musk. The zebra cub, trembling uncontrollably, was now safe, shielded by the immense, dark, rough bulk of the buffalo. The great bull didn't linger. His job, his moment of inexplicable intervention, was complete. Perhaps it was a momentary territorial obligation, perhaps a fleeting empathy for the smallness of the trapped creature, or perhaps simply the sheer joy of a good, violent fight against an ancient enemy. He cast a single, indifferent glance back at the small, striped creature he had saved, a flicker of something incomprehensible, either affection nor malice, in his heavy, ancient eyes, before turning his massive body. He lumbered heavily back towards the dense, green thicket, swallowed once more by the concealing complexity of the landscape, leaving the zebra cub alone, but alive. The herd, finally responding to the residual panic in the air, arrived minutes later, finding the calf safe, confused, but miraculously unharmed. It was the ultimate, raw display of random, unwarranted mercy in the unforgiving realm of the wild, a moment proving that sometimes, even the most aggressive creatures have a chaotic capacity for heroism. And that is the miracle. That is the unbelievable truth of the lone zebra cub and the monstrous crocodiles. If this incredible, raw display of unexpected compassion and stunning violence moved you, if the shocking identity of the savior stunned you, do us a favor right now. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't already joined our community for more astonishing stories, and most importantly, tell us in the comments below, from which country and city are you witnessing this amazing, true story of survival? Your engagement helps us bring you more of these astounding moments from the natural world. Thank you for watching.